Good afternoon, folks. And today we're going to talk about teams that had a pretty good showing and teams that were not much of a showing. But right now we're going to talk about the teams that were not much of a showing but had some good showing. Rutgers, starting with Rutgers and Howard. Rutgers 44, Howard 7. Now, we're going to talk about their debut, the quarterback's debut, and their stats. Now, number 16, Athan Kalamakanemis, or however you pronounce that, I'm not real good. He went 15 of 24, 147 yards, and 3 TDs. That's pretty damn good for a quarterback. Now, rushing yards, 329 yards. Plus, we're going to go over their defense. 329 yards of total rushing and 476 total yards. That's pretty darn good for to start this year off. Now, when it comes to defense, then they had Eric Rogers, had a pick 6 for 52 yards out. And then 116 yards passing allowed, and receiving, obviously. And 145 yards rushing allowed, which is 261 total yards. Now, that's pretty darn good, considering that's how the whole works. Now let's look at some other things here. The Minnesota, that's them. Now Minnesota. North Carolina 19, Minnesota 17. Now, that's some pretty good stuff. Number 16, Max Brosmer. 13 of 21. 13 of 21. No touchdowns. For 165 yards. Also pretty good. 79 rushing. Now, these are not the quarterbacks themselves with these rushing yards. These are just all together. 79 rushing yards with 244 total yards. Now, the Minnesota defense, 105 total passing yards, 147 total rushing yards, with 252 total yards in defense. Now, Illinois, next game, Illinois 45, Eastern Illinois nothing. Now, this is going to be an entertaining game here. Number 9, Luke Altmaier, went 19 of 24 for 213 yards, 4 touchdowns. Then number 10, the backup, Donovan Leary, 2 of 5 for 29 yards, like a total of 242 yards, with 244 rushing yards. That's 486 total yards. That's impressive. Minnesota, not very impressive on their total yardage, but that's impressive there. Illinois defense, 147 passing yards, 2 interceptions, 49 rushing, for 196 total yards allowed. That's pretty good. Pretty good defense there. Now, Michigan State, we'll take a look at them here. A 16-10 win for Michigan State. Number 2, Aiden Childs, 10 of 24, 114 yards, 2 interceptions, 179 rushing yards, with a total of 293 total yards. Yeah, not too bad. Now the defense, 116 passing, 2 interceptions, 132 rushing, with 248 total yards. That's pretty good, though. You gotta be concerned about the numbers there. Now, Nebraska and UTEP. Nebraska overwhelms UTEP 40-7. Nebraska offense, when it comes to quarterbacks, number 15, the true freshman Dylan Raiola goes 19 of 27 for 238 yards, 2 touchdowns. Number 10, Heinrich Harburg goes 5 of 5 for 35 yards. Number 19, Jalen Gramstad goes 1 of 3 for 11 yards. Some good stats there. 284 yards passing, 223 yards rushing, with 507 total yards. Now Nebraska's defense, 2 INTs, 149 yards passing, 56 yards rushing, and 205 total yards. So, again, pretty decent defense there. Can't complain. Now UCLA versus Hawaii. UCLA's number 4, Ethan Garbers, 19 of 38 for 272 yards and 1 TD and 2 interceptions. 71 yards rushing with 343 total yards. So, the running game's really not there for UCLA. But the passing game is there. So, that's something you need to be watching out for if you're playing against UCLA. Now, Washington. Now, as for their defense, 2 interceptions, 227 yards passing, 51 yards rushing, with a total of 278 yards. So that's pretty good. Now we come to Washington. Washington pretty much topples Weber State 35-3. Now, the Mississippi State transfer, Will Rogers, who pretty much played lights out, went 20 of 26 for 250 yards and 1 touchdown. While his backup, number 2, Damon Williams Jr., went 3 of 5 for 28 yards and 1 touchdown. For 278 total yards and 204 rushing yards, which is 482 total yards. Now, Washington's defense, 98 passing yards, 155 rushing yards with 253 total yards. So, can't complain. Now, onto one of the real good teams. USC offense. Number 7, Miller Moss, 27 of 36 for 378 yards, 1 touchdown. 69 yards rushing with 447 total yards. Okay. USC defense. 304 yards passing, 117 yards rushing with 421 total yards. Okay, there you have it. With those parts. Some pretty daggone good teams there. LSU, a very good team. Those guys are phenomenal. Now, if you're going to compare them to other teams, USC is pretty much an underdog run. It's pretty much a team that you pretty much should watch out for. Now, USC I can't really look past. You shouldn't really look past because they played some pretty good games lately. They're a team you shouldn't really look past. Now, we'll look at some other teams here. Penn State. 35, West Virginia 12. Now, let's look at how the Penn State offense did under the quarterbacks. Number 15, Drew Aller. 11 of 17 for 216 yards, 3 touchdowns. And number 9, Bo Pribula. 1 of 1 for 19 yards and 1 touchdown. That's 235 total yards. And then 222 rushing yards with 457 total yards. Then the defense. 161 passing yards, 85 rushing yards, total yards allowed. So, that's 246 total yards. Then you got Miami, you got Northwestern and Miami of Ohio playing each other. 13-6, Northwestern and Miami. Now, Penn State, that's a pretty good posting by Penn State. Now, Northwestern and Miami. Number 5, Mike Wright, 18 of 30, 178 yards, 1 touchdown. Then 150 total yards of rushing, 328 total yards. Then the defense, 227 passing yards and receiving, and 40 rushing yards, 267 total yards. Now, we go to the Oregon offense. Now we go to Oregon versus Idaho. The one game everyone will be talking about for a good while. One game everyone will be talking about. 24-14, Oregon over Idaho. Such a disappointing performance by Oregon. Dylan Gabriel, 41 of 49, The offense was phenomenal by Oregon. I was not disappointed by the offense. I mean, but I was quite disappointed by the offensive performance on some occasions, though the numbers were quite impressive. 41 of 49, 380 yards, 2 touchdowns, 116 rushing yards, 496 total yards. 496 total yards. Now the Oregon's defense, 2 interceptions, 168 passing yards, and 49 rushing yards allowed, which is 217 total yards allowed. Now, we'll get back to Penn State momentarily with Oregon and Michigan. Now, number 16, Davis Warren. Now we go to Michigan. Michigan 30, Fresno State 10. Now, this is another one everyone will be talking about. Davis Warren, number 16, who's a starting quarterback apparently, went 15 of 25, 118 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Then number 10, Alex Orji, went 1 of 2 for 3 yards, 1 touchdown, with 121 total yards, 148 rushing yards, with 269 total yards. The Michigan defense, 2 interceptions, 235 yards, 9 rushing yards, but 244 total yards. Such a disappointment there. Then Ohio State played a very phenomenal game with Akron. 52-6 over Akron. Now they were slow to start, only up 17-6 at half, but then they went on and blew up this game in the second half. Number 18, Will Howard, the Kansas State transfer, went 17-28 for 228 yards and 3 touchdowns. Then Devin Brown, number 33, Devin Brown, went 1 of 3 for 6 yards, making that 234 total yards, 170 yards, with 404 total yards. Now on defense, they had 1 interception, 130 passing, and 47 rushing, with a total of 177 total yards. So, that there, folks, tells you everything you need to know about everyone's defense. Now, we'll go back over these stats later on tonight. Maybe around like 8 o'clock, maybe I'll figure that part out. But this here tells you everything you need to know about every team. Now, let me know down in the comments section who you think is overrated with all these stats, because you already heard the numbers. Tell me who you think is overrated and why they're overrated, and hit the like button, hit the bell for notifications. I mean, these quarterbacks literally are showing why. And tonight we're going to talk about another team that we're going to talk about is Texas, even though they're not Big Ten. Texas overwhelmingly destroyed Colorado State, 52-0. Number 3, Quinn Ewers, went 20-27 for 260 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. While number 16, Arch Manning, went 5 of 6 for 95 yards and 1 touchdown. Sorry about that. 190 yards. I mean, that's with 355 total passing yards, 190 rushing yards, which is 545 total yards. While their defense had 2 interceptions, 74 passing yards, and 118 rushing yards, which is a total of 192 yards altogether. So, that there will be telling you everything you need to know. Now, later on tonight, we will talk about every quarterback. We'll be talking about Texas. We'll be talking about Texas versus Michigan, Oregon versus Boise State, Ohio State versus Western Michigan, about every team's average on their playing, about who their top players are on both defense and offense, about their certain numbers that they had here, and what they think. So, with that being said, I am out of here. And hope to see you on the next one. Peace.